In the highest room of a medieval stone tower, a princess lies in bed. She looks peaceful, dressed in fine clothes, surrounded by roses, and warmed by a lit furnace. But when she stirs awake, she finds her hands locked in shackles. There's a sharp ache behind her head and a foggy memory of how she ended up here. Her vision is blurry at first, the room dipping and swaying until it slowly comes into focus. No guards in sight. Her legs are free, giving her a small chance to move and look around. But escape is out of the question. There's only an open window with a violent sea far below, and across the room, a closed door with muffled voices growing louder on the other side. As the voices get closer and more alert, she rushes back into bed and pretends to sleep. When the guards enter the room, they see what they expect. A sleeping princess. One guard steps forward, ignoring a warning from the other, but it's too late. The princess strikes first, smashing her forehead into his face with all the force she can manage. They only hear her scream, not realizing she just broke her thumb to slip out of the cuff. Now free, she grabs the chain and swings it like a flail, turning her restraint into a weapon. But that's not all she has. Hidden in her hair is a sharp stiletto pin, which she drives straight into the face of a guard, forcing him back until he falls. With his partner down, the second guard steps up, but she's no scared prisoner. She grabs the blade from the body and strikes again, first in the calf, then in the shoulder. The knife stays buried in his shoulder, and as he rises, she's still hanging on, holding the other end. He tries to shake her loose, but she fights harder, wrapping the chain around her fist and turning each punch into a brutal, heavy blow to his face. The fight rages until she drives him back toward the open window. He mocks the idea of escape, but she's not planning to jump. She's planning to finish him. And with one hard kick, she sends him flying out the window into the crashing sea below. There's barely time to breathe. Another guard enters the room. She grabs a heavy hammer and charges, beating him down. She takes his keys, unlocks her other wrist, and after quickly cleaning herself up, she leaves the room, locks the door, and tosses the keys aside. Soon, the princess reaches another room in the tower, one with a view of the chaos unfolding below. Through the window, she sees guards locking down the entrance so no one can escape or get in. A crowd is being held at the mercy of Julius and his enforcer Moira. The royal family has fallen, and the king's pleas for peace and diplomacy mean nothing now. Julius has his own plans. He intends to marry the princess and rule the kingdom with a stronger, harsher hand, correcting what he sees as the king's weakness with power and dominance. As her family is dragged out of sight, guilt sets in. With only 2 daughters, the kingdom had no male heir. That's why she was promised to Julius. The king reminded her of that as he walked her to the altar, but she couldn't go through with it. She left him at the altar, and that's when everything spiraled out of control. Now, soaked in silence, she hides as a massive figure enters the room, a giant. He's unaware of her presence as he steps in to relieve himself. She hides inside a tub filled with water, trying to stay perfectly still. Bubbles rise as she struggles to hold her breath. The giant, too distracted by his reflection in the mirror, never notices her. Eventually, he finishes and leaves. The princess bursts out of the water, gasping for air. Soaked to the bone, her dress becomes more of a burden than anything else. She peels off the heavy layers and moves on, careful to avoid more guards. But in the hallway, she runs straight into the giant again. He's got a sword as massive as he is, and his skin is thick, even in the places he just relieved himself. It's a battle of brute strength against skill. At first, she holds him off. Then she finds an opening and starts turning his own power against him. The fight escalates until she gets the upper hand, climbing up onto his shoulders, grabbing the horns on his helmet and yanking it off. She drives one of the horns into his back, then smashes him in the head with the helmet, knocking him out cold. The moment stirs a memory. She remembers being a young girl who dreamed of becoming a warrior. She looked up to Lynn. Her mother, pregnant at the time, had wanted a son and didn't approve of her daughter training like a soldier, but Lynn managed to convince the queen to allow the lessons, as long as the king never found out. Meanwhile, down by the shore, the body of the guard she kicked out the window has washed up. Soldiers drag it in and present it to Julius. Kerr, the head of the guards, believes the man just fell, but Moira sees the bruises and knows better. Julius doesn't like risks. He orders Kerr to check on the princess and makes it clear what will happen if things go wrong. But once Julius is out of sight, Kerr shifts the danger to someone else. He picks another guard for the job, someone who looks more suited for standing around than climbing. The type who hasn't seen the top of a staircase in years. Back in the tower, the princess takes a moment to rest in another room. She strips off more of her ruined dress to move easier. It turns out to be a smart move. Two thieves suddenly burst in. She acts fast, grabbing a broken wooden post and stabbing the first one. The second lunges, but she's already pulling the lace from her corset. In one smooth motion, she ties him to a nearby pillar, binding him in place with quick, sharp precision. She finds a crossbow and aims it at the thief still tied to the pillar, demanding to know what Julius has done with her family. But like the others, he doubts her. Even restrained, he mocks her, convinced she doesn't even know how to use it. That thought doesn't last. The first thief stirs behind her, barely upright again, until she spins around and fires. One shot, no hesitation. The body drops for the final time. If the man tied to the pillar didn't take her seriously before, he should now. But he stays defiant, still trying to talk his way through her questions. She ends the noise with another clean shot. No answers. But she leaves with a sword. The tower is crawling with guards, all scavenging for riches and spoils. She moves carefully, avoiding every patrol. While the heavyset guard rests on a window ledge halfway up the stairs, trying to catch his breath, the princess clings to the outside of that same ledge, holding on tight above the rocks and sea below. The sword's weight is too much to balance, so she lets it fall, watching it vanish into the water. Once the guard continues his slow climb, she pulls herself back inside, breathless. Then she keeps moving, slipping quietly through shadows and narrow halls, dodging the distracted men too busy feasting and stealing to notice her. Julius has no idea his soldiers are looting behind his back. She finds a bedchamber just after some guards leave. This one she knows well. She walks straight to a hidden spot and draws a blade, one only she would know is there. Holding it, old memories return, training in the forest with Lynn. Lessons not just in fighting, but in fighting with heart, not rage. To challenge her, Lynn had invited Kai, the king's advisor and her own former mentor. He had trained Lynn, and now he was there to test the next generation. The princess held her own. When the fight ended, Kai gave her the sword as a gift, proof that she had a warrior's heart. Now she straps on a belt and boots, leaving her delicate shoes behind. Armed and ready, she listens. She hears Julius's voice drifting through a narrow passage. She follows it, finds a small crack in the wall, and peers through. There he is, with Moira, not just allies, lovers. Julius can't seize the kingdom by force, at least not in the eyes of the nobles. To gain power, he needs to marry the princess and pretend to follow tradition. Then, the moment the crown is placed on his head, the king will be killed. A marriage proposal backed by blades. A royal murder, dressed up as ceremony. Now the princess finally has her answers. Moira continues whispering sweet encouragement, pushing Julius further down the path towards seizing the throne. Her words blend with passion as she pulls him in, kissing him deeply and guiding him toward the wall, their moans echoing softly. The princess sees her chance. Clever and quick, she sets a trap behind the wall, predicting exactly where the lovers will drift. She carves out a narrow hole, creating the perfect angle for a deadly strike. Her blade inches from Julius's head. The moment that could have ended, everything is cut short by a knock at the door. A guard brings news. The king is asking to meet. Moira is torn, annoyed at the interruption, but satisfied that progress is being made. Meanwhile, the guard sent to check on the princess finally reaches the top of the tower, gasping for breath. He peeks through the keyhole and sees what looks like a guard slouched in a chair and the princess asleep in bed. Satisfied, he turns and starts the long walk back down to report to Kerr. The princess, still deep in enemy territory, moves unseen through the halls. Guards are everywhere, but they're focused on looting, not watching. Below, the king meets with Julius. Calm and measured, he urges Julius to reconsider his approach, warning that this path will only turn his people against him. But Julius isn't moved. He lays out his grievance, accusing the king of betrayal. To him, it all began with the princess, her refusal, her defiance, her abandonment. Far above, the princess squeezes through a narrow window into another part of the castle, crawling out onto a ledge. She lands between the legs of a massive armored guard. At first, she assumes he's just another oversized soldier, not worth her focus, until his sword pins her clothing to the floor. She's caught off guard and not thrilled to face another giant right after the last, but survival kicks in. She dodges his wild swings, her blade clashing against layers of steel. Each hit sparks as metal strikes metal. Her attacks barely leave a scratch. Then she finds an opening, his armpit, exposed beneath all that armor. She strikes it 3 times with precision. Then, using his oiled armor to her advantage, she grabs a lit candle and throws it. Flames explode across his body, setting him ablaze in seconds. The meeting between Julius and the king ends in failure. Julius is still bent on power and dominance. Just as he's about to leave, the out-of-shape guard from earlier arrives to report that the princess is safe and sound in her room. Right then, the flaming corpse of the armored guard crashes down from above, landing at Julius's feet. Furious, Julius orders Kerr to end whatever madness is happening in the tower. But Kerr won't get the chance. As soon as Julius steps away, Moira tries to assert herself. She makes a bold comment, suggesting a theory. Kerr mocks her, calling her a harlot and dismissing her voice as meaningless. Moira doesn't argue. She lets her whip speak instead, snapping it straight into his throat. Blood pours as he collapses, his body twitching on the floor. Falls silent. Without missing a beat, Moira steps into Kerr's role and gives her first command. Find the intruder and finish her. No more chances. The princess, aware of what's coming, watches as troops scatter across the tower in search of her. Panic builds in her chest. Fear takes over and she runs. But her escape is blocked. 3 fighters come at her. She's slashed across the arm, but she doesn't stop. She drops 2 with fast, clean strikes, one throat after another. The third falls as she breaks past them. The number of enemies becomes overwhelming. That's when she makes a risky move, ripping off her diamond necklace and scattering the gems across the floor. The chasing guards trip and tumble, giving her just enough of a window to flee. But it's not over. One humiliated guard charges, his pride fueling his rage. She now carries a shield, and with it, she holds her ground. The blow comes as expected and ends as it should. Then the rest swarm. One sword slashes across her waist. She screams, a sound that stops the crowd cold, but she doesn't fall. She grabs the nearest guard and uses him as a shield, then makes a daring leap down to a lower level of the castle. One guard tries to follow but lands hard, leg shattered. The others are forced to take the stairs. The chubby guard stumbles past the princess like a half-dead zombie. Too out of it to even notice her. She watches him go, stunned that he doesn't recognize the danger he's walking past. Spotting a flag just outside the window, she dives out and grabs it. Swinging along the vertical wall, she builds momentum side to side before landing inside a nearby room. Pain shoots through her side, her waist wound bleeding badly. Memories start to surface. She had once overheard her parents discussing her future, her marriage. Her mother had begged the king to reconsider, but he dismissed her concerns. He wanted what he believed was best for the kingdom. She had stepped out in her training gear that day, armor instead of a dress, shocking her father. He hadn't known until that moment. Angry, he tried to reason with her, calling her foolish and delusional. In his eyes, the throne needed a man. She might dream of knighthood, but he saw a child in need of protection. To him, marrying Julius was protection. A respectable man from a respectable family. He left her with the choice, trusting she'd come around when her childish tantrum passed. She had been close to tears then, and now, with that memory fading, the sting returns. Footsteps snap her out of it. She reacts fast, tackling the figure that enters and pinning them to the ground, only to see Lynn beneath her. The two freeze, then breathe. Lynn had been climbing up to find her and is relieved they met halfway. As Lynn treats the princess's wound, she explains what happened. Julius brought soldiers in the dead of night. The king's guards were outnumbered. Lynn barely escaped, along with a few others. The princess, overwhelmed with guilt, starts to blame herself, but Lynn cuts it off. The past won't help now. Lin knows where the royal family is being held, and more importantly, how to get there. There's an unguarded route through the kitchen. They're going to take it. Once inside, they silently signal the cook to leave. A group of guards are cornering a female servant, their intentions vile and obvious. Lin and the princess have the element of surprise, but Lin bumps into something and causes a loud clatter. One of the guards, confused by Lin's sudden appearance, barely reacts before she drops him with a frying pan. The princess moves fast, helping the servant escape and leaving 3 guards against the 2 of them. In the kitchen, everything becomes a weapon. Pots, vegetables, water, even rags. The princess takes down one, Lin another. 1 guard remains. He lunges through the air, but never lands. Moira's whip lashes around his ankle and yanks him backward, crashing him into the floor. It's a dramatic entrance. Moira doesn't attack immediately. She speaks first, mocking the princess, saying all of this chaos could have been avoided if she had just played the weak, helpless role expected. Her whip gives her reach and power, striking without risk. The princess and Lin struggle to close the gap. Then things turn worse. The whip snaps around the princess's neck and Moira starts choking the life out of her. But Lin won't back down. She fights through and finally frees the princess, then creates a barrier of fire between them and Moira, just enough to help the princess escape. The princess wants to stay and fight, but her family comes first. She disappears into a sloping tunnel, moving fast. Her path leads her into a room where guards are gambling and drinking. Without hesitation, she storms in, snatches a cup from one of them, and downs it, staring them down as they struggle to process what's happening. The first guard bold enough to grab her gets knocked out cold with the same cup. She doesn't slow down. In seconds, all 3 are down, just as her family steps into view. The king is proud. The queen looks stunned. Violet, her little sister, smiles like she expected nothing less. The princess frees them and starts leading the way to safety. But in war, staying close to the people you love can be its own weakness. Just moments into their escape, a heavy strike hits the princess's head. Everything goes dark. She wakes up disoriented. Her vision clears just in time to see her family recaptured and Lin bloodied and dragged in by Moira. Julius doesn't hide his disappointment. He taunts the princess, but she fires back with sharp words and cold defiance. He reveals his twisted plan, expecting her to resist. But to his surprise, she agrees, saying she looks forward to what comes next. Her voice drips with sarcasm as she vows to make his rule miserable. And if he dares to kill her, she promises she'll haunt him for the rest of his days. Moira grows tense under the princess's mockery, but Julius is finished with the games. He turns to the younger sister, Violet, quiet, innocent, and still just a child. Tears fall down the princess's cheeks. The king, still holding on to a shred of hope for Julius's decency, though no one knows why, thinks surely he'll draw the line here. But Julius has no such line. The princess and Lin lock eyes. No words are needed. The plan is clear. The princess charges forward, creating chaos to distract Moira and the guards. It's enough for Lin to slip in, grab Violet, and pull her away from Julius's reach. But with her hands bound, the princess can't fight. She's quickly overpowered and thrown through a high castle window into the cold river below. Unconscious, she drifts through the current. In that dark space between life and death, memories return. Lin's voice reminds her, the blade is not a fighter's greatest tool. It's the heart. A real fighter isn't shaped by combat, but by purpose. And her purpose has never been clearer. Her family is in danger. She wakes. Desperate and gasping, she finds a sharp edge, slices through her bindings, and swims to the surface. The wedding must be stopped. Back at the castle, Julius arranges a rushed ceremony. Clergymen gather. Guards spread across every hall, searching for the runaway bride. But the princess isn't done. Soaked and bleeding, she finds her way back into the tower, determined to finish what she started. Then, another threat. A huge soldier blocks her path, laughing as he approaches, likely imagining the worst. Before he can act, a massive statue crashes down onto him. Violet stands behind it, wide-eyed but fierce. The princess, reunited with Lin and her little sister, can't hide her pride. But the weight of the moment settles in. She regrets becoming a fighter. Maybe if she'd remained just a royal daughter, no one would have died. But deep down, she knows it's not her choices that made Julius a monster. Guards are still sweeping the castle, so Lynn leads the princesses into a hidden storeroom, prepared for emergencies. The grand hall fills with nobles and guests, waiting for a wedding that should never happen. In the storeroom, the three arm themselves: swords, breastplates, and courage. Even now, there's room for a laugh as Violet asks to join the fight. The princess promises that one day she will train her properly, but not today. For now, Violet must stay hidden and stay safe. Elsewhere, Julius presses a blade to the queen's face, demanding she call Violet out. The queen refuses, even with death staring her down. Soldiers pour into the castle faster than they can be stopped. Lynn discards her bow, too slow for the chaos coming, and draws a close-range double-edged sword, built for exactly this. A guard spots the princess and fires an arrow that just barely misses. It throws off their rhythm. Lynn pulls the princess into an alcove between stone pillars. It's narrow, barely enough to hide them, but it'll do. They regroup, gather themselves, and charge back into the fray, slicing through wave after wave of enemies. Julius, ever watchful, notices something off, a flicker of tension in Kai's corner. It's subtle, a glance, a shift in posture, but enough to raise suspicion. Trusting his instincts, he moves in. Kai, realizing he's been made, quickly slips a dagger back into Violet's hand. He gives her one final nod and silently urges her to run. Elsewhere, the princess's earlier advice rings true. Lynn targets weak points, joints, and gaps in the armor. The tactic works. One enemy after another drops under their blades. But Julius isn't far behind. His instincts lead him directly to Violet's hiding spot. Without hesitation, he drags her out by the arm. She fights back, but it's no use. He orders her to kneel, then turns to the priests and demands they begin the wedding immediately. From a distance, the princess and Lynn catch sight of what's happening. No more time. They share one last look, and with silent agreement, split up. Lynn bolts for the grand hall. She bursts through the doors like a storm, sword drawn, launching herself into the fray. Her entrance is so sudden and fierce, it shatters the moment and draws every eye, especially Julius's. Kai now leads the others to safety while Julius finally steps into the fight, maybe to remind everyone he's still the villain at the center of it all. But Moira isn't interested in a group brawl. She breaks away and heads outside, straight for the princess, demanding a one-on-one battle. As always, Moira keeps her distance, cracking the whip like she's performing in a ring. It slices through the air with brutal precision. In the chaos, she even knocks the princess's sword away, gaining the upper hand. But the princess adapts fast. She shifts tactics, grabs hold of the whip mid-swing, and turns it back on Moira. With brutal force, she drives the whip's sharp edge into Moira's neck. Moira falls exactly the way she once tried to kill the princess, strangled by her own weapon. Her neck snapped by the same deadly cord. Inside, the king takes a desperate swing at Julius, but he's too weak. His strike barely scratches, and Julius beats him down with ease, sending him back to the queen, perhaps to explain why he didn't land a single real blow. Lynn steps forward next, taking on Julius herself. She fights hard, but he's skilled. His blade finds its way into her side, and the injury draws grim stares from both Kai and the princess. With his plan unraveling, Julius decides to crown himself. He picks up the king's crown and places it on his own head like it was always meant to be there. The princess moves in, launching her own attack. But Julius overpowers her. He taunts her, mocks her, digging deep with cruel words that strike as hard as any blade. Their fight spills outside the hall. The king and the kingdom watch as the two battle alone, steel against steel, will against ego. Julius boasts about the reign he'll bring, about ruling with fear and brute force, no matter who suffers, but the princess holds her ground. She remembers Lynn's training, patience and precision over pride. Julius talks too much, and that becomes his final mistake. She waits for the opening, and when it comes, she strikes clean. Her blade slices through his neck, ending his reign before it begins. His head drops. The fight is over. She picks up the crown and returns it to the king. The hall is silent for a moment, then bursts into cheers. The threat is gone, and peace is restored. Right there, the king makes a bold declaration. The princess is the rightful heir. No more waiting for a son. The future of the kingdom is hers. He turns to her, not just as a king, but as a father, and asks for forgiveness. He finally sees her for who she truly is. Their joy is complete when Kai approaches, supporting Lin, who's wounded but alive. The princess rushes to her side, overwhelmed with relief. Lin made it. Victory fills the air. The people celebrate. Every enemy has been defeated, except one. Down the hallway, the chubby guard finally appears, just now finishing his long journey down the stairs.